right, the time is 5:30. I'm going to call to order the Committee of the Whole for January 13th, 2025. Clerk Boak, can you please take the roll?
Councilmember Brown?
Present.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Present.
Councilmember Carter?
Here.
Councilmember Pelivanoglu? Councilmember Garza? Councilmember Cost?
Here.
Councilmember Hussein?
Here.
Councilmember Jackson? 7 members present.
All right, so we have the minutes from January 6th, 2025.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the January 6th minutes.
All right, we have a proper motion in place. Is there any further questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Passes unanimously. All right, next, we are going to move on to public comment. Now is the time for anyone that has a public comment. Please come up to the podium and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Loretta Stanaway, I understand you're going to have the Human Resources folks in today, so I wanted to just throw a few things out there for consideration. One of them, and I'm not certain, but I've been told that it is not customary in the city of Lansing, and hasn't been for a number of years, for there to be annual reviews. And if that is accurate information, I would strongly suggest that there should be mandatory annual reviews for every worker in every department every single year. Second, there's issues with the affidavits of disclosure that employees have to file if they're working an additional job outside of the scope of their city job. And I think that those need to be structured in such a way that when someone files an affidavit and then is promoted over the years or their responsibilities change, they have to refile instead of filing once and 25, 30 years later, no matter how many promotions they've had, no matter how many different job responsibilities they've had, they've not filed a new affidavit. And if it doesn't already say that they have to list any partners or silent partners, it should do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else here from the public that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, and we have no virtual participants, we're going to move on to item 5, discussion action B, which is a resolution setting a public hearing on the noise special permit to allow for the combined sewer overflow south project. Mark Jones, I believe, is here from the Public Service Department.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. I will give you the floor and make sure your green light is on the microphone.
Okay. Good evening, council. This is a resolution for the 2025 construction year noise waiver for the 015 South project, which is generally the area that we'll be working in is west of MLK, south of Saginaw to Michigan Avenue. The contractor worked every Saturday this past year. They expect to do the same this summer. My request is to set a public hearing for February 10th to consider the public's comments.
Are there any questions? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned every Saturday work's been done.
That's correct.
Which was
yes.
like the optional every Saturday, or it was anticipated every Saturday when it started?
Well, it was a requirement of the contract last year that they had to work every Saturday because we had MLK shut down. So we were really pushing hard to make sure that we got that road open as soon as possible. And so that was, that was a requirement of the contract. So they do expect to work every Saturday, but, you know, obviously weather concerns sometimes come into play, but, you know, for the most part, they do expect to work every Saturday as possible.
Can you name the approximate start and finish times on average on those Saturdays?
Well, our resolution says they can't start equipment on Saturdays until 8 a.m.
I mean, I just wondered, I'm sorry, just
Oh.
like what actually happened on your Saturday?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there were times when they did start equipment earlier, but when we got wind of that, we talked to the contractor and made sure they're aware of the times. So I believe, they were starting at 8 and generally, started cleaning up around 3:30, just so they had time to get out of there before the sunset and everything, so.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilman Hussein.
So we're talking about Levin and Stark. So you said that there were complaints actually lodged last year to Public Services about them starting up trucks and equipment prior to, or before. Because
Yes.
when we went through this, we were very clear last year that we did not want those things to happen. And I thought they understood. So we did get some complaints.
Yes, I mean, generally it meant they were on site. Actually, there was a few that ended up being actually O&M workers that were doing some work and they thought it was the contractor. But there were a handful of times that maybe they started equipment at 7:50 or something. And so, but we, anytime it came up, we made sure that they were aware of the constraints, so.
And
I
they were
think-
responsive. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right, thank you, Councilman Hussein. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Vice President Carter?
Yes, I'll make a motion to the setting of the public hearing for February 10th on the noise special permit.
All right. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. It will be on for February 10th. City Council. Next, and I believe Mark is staying right there. We have a resolution on the issuance of sewage disposal system revenue bonds. The floor is
Yes.
once again yours, sir.
Okay. So yes, as part of the city's wet weather control program, we are continuing with the next phase of the project pursuant to the 2019 Administrative Consent Order. Before you tonight is the bond resolution for the 2025 project bonds. That includes the Lansing Avenue Pump Station, Equalization Basin, and the CSO 019 area. The 019 area is generally bounded by West Maple Street to the north and West Saginaw to the south, and North Chestnut Street to the west, and North Grand Avenue to the east. So it includes some fairly major streets. We've got Saginaw, Oakland, Grand. So this is expected to take about 2 years to complete. And then the Lansing Avenue Pump Station Equalization Basin is located at the north end of Lansing Avenue near the river, and which is close to MLK up where the river crosses there. The loan amount in the resolution is for these projects is not estimated to not exceed $45 million. The loan will be paid back over 30 years, and generally the SRF loans are under 2%. Total construction cost is approximately $51 million for the two projects, of which $44 million is SRF eligible. Eagle has indicated that these projects is expected to receive $4.2 million in principal forgiveness on the loan. Lansing Board of Water and Light is also participating in the 019 project at a cost of $2.7 million. MDOT is also participating at a cost of approximately $2.2 million. And the remaining funds will be funded through local street, major street, sanitary, and general funds. Both these projects are out to bid. The 019 project is scheduled to open bids tomorrow, January 14th, and the Lansing Avenue Pump Station bids are due January 30th. Final bond amounts will be determined after those bids are opened and evaluated.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mark? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, Vice President Carter.
Yes, I make a motion for the issuance of sewage disposal system revenue bonds.
All right, we have a proper motion in place. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Passes unanimously. Thank you for your time, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, next we are going to move on to a presentation. We have Dennis and Elizabeth here to talk about the City of Lansing hiring process and practices. You guys want to come on down to the well? Good evening to both of you. And your microphone is on? Perfect.
I think it's on. Good evening and congratulations to the new president and vice president of the council. We thank you for letting us come and talk to you about the hiring process.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here. Just so everyone's aware, the mayor had requested both of you come down to give a presentation on the hiring process. I know it's been in the media and has been discussed, so I will shut up and we look forward to this presentation.
Thank you. Again, my name is Elizabeth O'Leary. I'm the Director of Human Resources, and I have Dennis Parker here with me. He is our Chief Labor Negotiator for the city. First, I think it's important to do an overview of human resources as a whole. Hiring is a big topic, but it's not the only thing that human resources does for the city. In the big picture, we have hiring, which includes a hiring manager, 4 specialists, and 2 contract workers. We also have health and wellness and safety, which includes 2 regular full-time employees. Labor relations has 1 full-time employee and 1 contract worker. Payroll and benefits has 2 full-time, 1 part-time, and 1 contract employee. Retirement has 2 full-time employees, and that's all for 901 budgeted positions. That 901 excludes contracts, TEAs, and seasonals, and others. So HR has 16 budgeted positions filled out of 17 total. That includes myself and our Deputy Director, Kyla Moore, who is sitting in the stands as well. We also have the 4 contract workers. So next I wanted to do an overview of the hiring process to provide a big picture viewpoint of what all it entails. So we facilitate the hiring process for all city departments, and that touches a variety of different industries across the city. We work on filling the vacancies in a priority order, and the department directors determine the priority. As the HR director, I'm not going to tell a department director, hey, we're adamantly filling this position. They have to come to us to say this is the priority in which we want these positions filled. When a department's looking to fill a vacancy, the job description is reviewed. And if there are proposed edits, the departments provide those proposed edits to us. HR reviews the proposed edits to see if there's any substantive changes to the job description. If there are substantive changes to the job description, it goes to our classification consultant for review to see if that job level needs to be increased, if the pay is equitable across the city and other industries or other government entities. So when it goes to the consultant, a job description questionnaire has to be filled out along with the proposed edits to the job description as well as the org chart, and that goes to the consultant. The consultant then renders back the recommendation on where the position should be on the pay scale. If there's no changes to a position, then it would go straight to doing a requisition, which would include the strategy of selection and hiring plan, which includes things like where they want the position posted, who do you want on your panel, what are some key things to note on this position and in the posting. where we want to advertise it, how long are we going to have this position posted, recommendations for assessment testing if applicable, and other relevant information. So most of our postings are going to be at least 6 days long, and that's a CBA requirement for most of our CBAs. When the applications are received by the HR specialist, that's when they're screened for minimum qualifications, and if they meet the minimum qualifications, and that's where they will go over to the department. Sometimes if there's experience that could meet equivalencies, that can also be factored in. Candidates, the departments then will put their comments on and advise if that person is going to move forward based upon the job description requirements. Then they may be scheduled for testing and assessment, and this is different across the city. So a clerical position may have some kind of assessment testing, maybe Excel, maybe Word, maybe just like Office Suite or accounting test, and we do that through SHL. If it's a UAW position, there may be a written test or a skills demonstration, and in addition to a skills demonstration test. So these are also things that HR has to vet to make sure that we're having equitable processes and that are fair. If the candidates pass the interview or pass the assessment testing, then they would go on to the interview process. We assist departments. They may send us draft interview questions, but HR would modify those to ensure that things remain fair and equitable. And then also a diverse interview panel is selected to interview the candidates. We've had interviews on Microsoft Teams, we've had them in person, based upon what the departments recommend and what's best for the position. Sometimes there'll be out-of-state candidates who need to have a virtual interview, so we'll make accommodations for those things as well. Once the interviews have completed, we do the breakdown of the scoring, and the recommended candidates, along with the other scorings, are sent to the department for them to make recommendations. Then the recommended candidates are sent the conditional offers and background check authorizations. Once we have the conditional offer out and there is a tentative agreement on what the pay is going to be, we start the background check process. So different positions have different backgrounds. If you have CDL, you may have to go through DOT screening, criminal history, our police and fire. So police has to have a thorough background investigation, and that takes quite a bit of time, as well as psychological evaluations, which are also conducted for our fire positions. So when we look at the positions posted, right now we have 13 positions posted, and that correlates to 41 of the vacancies. So there could be multiple. You might see one job, but there's multiple positions for that one job. There's also positions that we're working on that are not posted and that are in various stages. So after the position may come down from being posted, or when job descriptions are being created or reviewed or classified, or if we're just getting ready for the hiring process. So right now there's 27 that are in some stage of prep or hiring process. And that's separate from the 41. So I also wanted to touch on other things that factor into the vacancy list. So this year, in 2024, we had 70 retirements. We also had 42 resignations from budgeted positions. And from January 1 to December 31, we filled 166 budgeted positions. These are the positions that would be on the vacancy list. That doesn't include like TEA agreements in parks or other kinds of contracts that we may have in seasonals. I also wanted to go into the efforts that have been taken to create efficiencies within the hiring process. So members of our team have visited the Parnell Vocational Village, and we look forward to partnering with them to have returning citizens integrate into our workforce. We're also working with our Offender Success Program that's out of EDP, our CDL program where people can get their CDL license with the city. There's 20 people that have obtained the CDL license through the city program, and we have 5 that are in process right now. We're also looking forward to engaging and partnering with the Refugee Development Center, and we're in communication with them. We've attended 11 job fairs, and I just wanted to pause and see if anybody has any questions, or I can let Dennis go on to talk about some of our trainee programs.
You can keep going.
You can go.
Yeah, so some of the new things we're trying, because obviously some of our positions require special licensing, special skills, those kind of issues. I've been working with the unions to develop trainee programs. We currently have a fleet mechanic trainee program that I'd have to check when that's posted, but we're hoping to have that through soon. We've also, one of the big positions that was brought up was the electrician, which actually I've been working towards for the last probably 6 months. That job will post this week. So we've developed a plan. We reclassified the job, made it a little higher pay, and we have a transition period where we can hire them as a journeyman, and they will transition within 2 years. They should be able to obtain their master's electrician, which frees us up to pull some of the issues we're having with pulling permits. This allows us to do that, and also fill some other vacancies. Elizabeth touched on the CDL program. We've currently brought 20 people in as seasonals, and throughout the season, we train them to their CDL. By the time the season is over, they can sign a full-time position and be hired in full-time with a CDL. So those issues, we also have trainee, dewatering trainee position at wastewater. We also have a maintenance trainee position out there we have people transitioning through the process there. So assessing, the assessor's office, residential assessors require certain licensing. Well, to find somebody out there that has that licensing is almost impossible to get them to leave their other job. So we've put two apprentice positions in the assessor's office that they should also transition to fully qualified assessors. So those are some of the differences that, Elizabeth in her time has started making to hopefully speed this process along. So.
I also wanted to touch on the vacancy list doesn't also always reflect the people that are in training. So, for example, for LPD with police officers, right now, today, we have 10 vacancies, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, it'll be 9. We also put a posting up today for recruits for the August Academy, and we just brought in 7 on the 30th. So those positions are getting filled. We're excited about it, but a lot of times you're not going to see that reflected until people have completed the academy. LFD, we're looking to hire 25 people. We have an MOU in place where people are required to get their medic license. And so we're in the home stretch of the phases of the LFD process currently right now.
Councilman Spatafor.
Thank you. Ms. O'Leary, does that 25 include the 15 that we just approved the SAFE grant for? Okay.
That does,
Great,
yes.
thanks.
And one other position in fire, we are now going to be posting for fully qualified firefighter paramedics, so we can hire them individually as they come in instead of as a class. So,
Councilperson Jackson.
Just a couple of questions. First, for Elizabeth, since we have these vacancies that's for a longer period of time and people either for some reason basically don't choose to apply and go all the way through. So I heard, Dennis, you mentioned that you raised the salary for some by reclassifying. Is that something we can do for more of them so that it would be more competitive and more applicants will want to have that for a job? That's one question. And two, do we have any contact with our EDI board, advisory board, just for anything? Just because there is a board that operates and would probably be able to help with some of these ideas. And for Dennis, the CDL program, does it prevent them from going to a higher paying job once they get their CDL? The apprentice program, does it prevent them from going to a higher paying job once they get their license? And the medic license, does that prevent them from going anywhere besides Lansing once they get their license?
I can take the Dennis question. No, and that's kind of the risk at having these programs. I think it's worth it though to get people the licensing, to bring them in, to hopefully they will stay. But no, we don't have anything in place, and I'm not sure exactly what the plan would be to keep them here, because I don't necessarily want them. I don't want to put people in a situation where they're having to pay for education and then they leave and then we have to collect, and that's just not necessarily what we're interested in doing at this point. We just want to get people the licensing, and hopefully they will stay after we've invested. Can you remind me of what your question was for me?
If you could just do more raises to make it more competitive, and if we consulted with the EDI board, advisory board.
Okay, as to the classification, that is something that we look at when it comes to like filling these hard to fill positions. They can go to Siegel for classification, but we haven't done a whole group organization wide comp study in a number of years. So yes, it's something we look at and something the department heads look at with respect to pay, and it does happen on a few of them. And it's something that we look at when we're initially posting. And then did you say the EDI board? I have not had communication with the EDI board, but I welcome that. If people have ideas, if they want to collaborate, if they want to join in helping tackle this challenge, I welcome the opportunity, I welcome ideas, and I look forward to hearing from them if that's something they want to do.
All right, I have Vice President Carter.
Thank you, both Dennis and Elizabeth, for coming. Just a question regarding the process. So it's very cumbersome. So there's a lot of people that touch for even just one vacancy, one position. What's the process, though, say, for instance, you have a candidate in mind, they get through 80% of this, but then the testing assessment, there's a failure. What is the overlapping process? Is there an overlapping process, or how proactive are you into bringing in that next candidate, or have multiple candidates lined up? Because some of the things what I'm hearing is that there's a slow return in a response. So is there any process within that system?
Thank you for the question. And all of the candidates that meet the qualifications are generally moved on to the testing at the same time. So it's not a staggered process, and even we do interviews all at the same time with the people that meet those qualifications. So that's one thing that I think it's not necessarily a delay, because we are seeing them all at the same time.
All right, I have Councilperson Penny Vonnegut.
Thank you, President Cost. I have a question about the priority list that you receive from department directors. And my question kind of involves something that was already addressed. There was the electrician position that was very old, but it remained on the list as open. When you are receiving that list from department directors, does HR place a cap on the number of priority positions that you are posting? Does the department director send you 10 and you say, I can only post 7? How does that process work? How do you negotiate how many positions are posted based on their priority list?
So our specialists are in constant communication with department directors. I know our specialist for EDP, she gives updates once a week. They meet bi-weekly to determine what the priority is. The department directors are totally in charge of saying, this is what I want filled first, second, third. I think for EDP, we have a 13 bullet point list with that accounts for about 15 vacancies. And so EDP is not her only department. And I think a perfect world would have one specialist per one department, but that's not feasible at this point in time. But we work on it from what they tell us to do first, and as the workloads can manage.
Thank you. And then one follow-up question. For instance, you had said that with that particular position, you received some documentation that you had to reclass. It was a fairly old position, and so I imagine you're doing work to bring that up to date as far as skills, capabilities, pay, and so on. So for each position description, HR does not write those, is that correct? You're receiving those directly from the departments? You don't unilaterally write a position description for any given department?
So we're the holder of the position descriptions, but we rely on the department directors for the expertise, for the qualifications, for the certifications that are needed to fill the positions. We're probably the drafters, but they give us the content to be able to draft the position description. So before something's posted, we would send the position description to the director or whoever the hiring manager is. They make the edits to the position description and provide it to us. And then we review the edits and the red line to ensure that it meets qualifications of jobs as we have them listed, and any other edits that may be needed.
Thank you. And so just to make this clear and bring this point home, HR doesn't unilaterally just take the oldest vacancies and take those PDs that could be several years old and post just to get those filled. You do work closely with the department directors on each and every position that's posted.
We have to work with the departments. We're not on the ground floor assessing the needs of the department, and we can't fill these positions without them. They are generally the panel members for the interview process. They're the ones that are determining, okay, should we have this assessment or this skills demonstration? For skills demonstration, they're the ones that are doing the overview and supervising it. HR doesn't have the expertise in all these different industries that encompass the city to be able to say, oh yes, this person did this perfectly, or this is at 70% when it comes to like skills demonstrations and other things like that. So it is a very collaborative process. We have to have the department heads and the managers be fully engaged in this because they're there every step of the way. We're here to be the guardrails and to be advisory and to push the ball forward on these positions.
All right, I have Councilman Hussein, followed by Vice President Carter.
So you kind of led in with, capacity, budgeted positions within your shop, proportional to budget positions throughout the city of Lansing. And I ask you every year, if my math is right, we're looking at maybe one budgeted position per 56, 57, 58 employees, something like that, budgeted positions across the city. We know that's not best practice. Last year, in terms of your budget request, so for the fiscal year that we're currently in, did you ask for additional budgeted positions that weren't granted? Or that didn't make it through to the recommended budget?
It was the budgeted position I requested was granted,
It was?
and I appreciate that.
Okay. Do you plan to ask for additional budgeted positions this year?
At this point, we're kind of assessing capacity. There are other divisions in my department that I think would have a need, but we really need to take a mindful look and to see exactly what the need is. And so we're still assessing. So hiring has been a big priority. We've been very focused on it. It's now time for us to focus a lot of our efforts in some other divisions. As you know, I'm sure you've heard, we have a whole system upgrade to payroll. So we're going through that process. And so we don't know what the future will hold on what will be needed for that platform. Labor relations, we have our negotiation season is kicking off soon. So we have one person in HR and a contract worker doing all of labor relations, all of internal employee relations. So we've put a heavy focus on hiring, but now it's time to kind of spread some of the focus on other divisions to make sure that we are at a healthy level and we are operating and providing the internal services that our city employees deserve to have. And I will note that our team is phenomenal. They work so hard in hiring. You'll see them at community events. You'll see them at job fairs. They want to be out there. They want to do a good job. They want to bring these people in to the city. And I could echo that about every single division within my department. And this is a department where you don't necessarily hear things on, the news or out in the community as you may see like police and fire constantly, but please rest assured that our department is keeping like benefits going. We're keeping people safe on the job. We did a number of safety audits this year in health and wellness, and a tremendous amount of time was spent trying to keep people safe. These are the things that are behind the scenes that you don't see, and I think it's a good indicator if you're not hearing about it that it's going well.
Yeah, and you don't have to sell me on the important. Your department is incredibly important. That's why I ask the question every single year. And I think, and you spoke to it, I have a number of questions I wrote down that you actually addressed. But obviously the question is always about efficiency and kind of intradepartmental policy approach process, whether or not there are things we can make changes to and adjust there. But then also sometimes it comes down to just manpower and whether or not you actually have enough folks, again, across all divisions within the department. So I appreciate that. There was a question earlier. This is something that we've addressed a number of times. Do we have a system-wide, organization-wide evaluation system ready to roll? Yes or no?
No. And can I give some clarification?
Please do.
So the position that we will be posting soon for in HR is going to be charged with that role. I think it's very important that when you do when you do evaluations, that managers are trained and they know how to conduct evaluations based on the facts and remove some of the bias that may come into that. And that's a priority. I would rather get it right and have it be equitable and have managers fully comfortable with what they're relaying that ends up in a personnel file than to quickly put something together and say, oh, here's your evaluation. So that's the goal with that. We have a position that will be posted in the next couple of weeks that will go through a hiring process, and so that's the game plan for performance.
Okay, that helps. And then lastly, and I don't know how you do this, but I mean it's not my wheelhouse, not my expertise. We talked, there's so much that happens behind the curtain before the job posting. But the folks that we're talking to that say, look, man, the city of Lansing's process is incredibly slow. Apply to the county, apply to the state, some private entity. And your process took however much longer. I was already in the position, trained and working, and received a few paychecks before I heard from Lansing, right? And we essentially applied nearly at the same time for both positions. Do we track at all the time it takes from job posting to actual job offer, year-to-year basis, system-wide, and then determine, because we're adding all these, we think we're adding efficiencies, but do we know that it's actually having an impact? So do we track that at all?
So I wouldn't be able to pull a report and say, oh, this is what it is. But that's something that our deputy director is looking into to see how we can navigate that with our current system. We could look at specific positions to see when we posted, when we're getting these positions filled. But it's going to vary. A police and a fire position is going to be much longer than an admin clerical position because we're also doing all those background checks. But that is on the docket for figuring out exactly and having those metrics, but the data is only as good as you can get it out of your system, and so we need to get our system right.
All right, I've got Vice President Carter.
Thank you, President Koss. You both mentioned additional programs such as reentry programs, seeking out refugee apprentice programs and so forth. Is there anything on your radar as far as acquiring employees who are veterans or those who may have individual disabilities? Are we working with any of those outside partners?
So we are a certified veteran-friendly employer. So we have worked with the Veterans Agency through the state across the years, and that was before my tenure as well, where we got that certification. We welcome. I believe we do give extra points in processes to veterans, and we're happy to do that and have a veterans preference.
Councilman Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. O'Leary, you may have said this, but you've given me a lot of numbers tonight. How many collective bargaining agreements do we operate under with how many different units? Do you know off the top of your head?
6.
Go ahead.
There are 6 contracts, 2 different Teamsters groups, with one of the Teamsters contract split separately, and then CCLP, which is the police. They have a soups unit and a non-soups unit.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And fire. Did we say fire?
I have a couple quick questions. And I appreciate you bringing up the electrician job. That was something that I think was sitting out there for 18 years. Did that spark, I think we had actually discussed that the last few years, when you guys came down that position in particular. Did that spark maybe reviewing some of these positions that are on there? Because there are other positions that are just as old.
Well, I think it did, and the history of that position, it's been posted several times. It just, the wages weren't competitive on it for what we were asking for it. So, going through, updating the job description, sending it out, getting it reclassed should make it more attractive to the outside. In the meantime, we are still gonna have to hire a master under contract, which will be a year contract as the journeyman progresses through and gets his licensing, so.
And then, public service, this weekend at a contact meeting, there were 63 openings. Many of those were, I think, maintenance workers. And so I guess my question would be, what is the length of time from start to finish? Because we know those are the ones that are out there doing a lot of the services that the citizens expect. So from start to finish, how long would it take me to get hired if I put an application in tonight?
With
Roughly.
with a CDL, that posting's been open it's just been a continuous run, for 2 years now, probably. I would say within, and maybe she should answer this, it's her department, I don't wanna.
Yeah, I can get you specifics for the maintenance worker 400 position on what it's taken for us to fill positions for that role. I can give you an update, though, that we have 4 applicants scheduled for skills testing this week. We have 9 applicants scheduled for a written test this week as well. So hopefully those will get us to where we need to be. We currently have 12 vacancies in that position.
And do every one of those positions require a CDL?
The 400 maintenance worker, yes.
Okay. Is that because they do the plow truck, things like that?
Yes, they have to drive commercial vehicles, so, but we have been transitioning several of our seasonals that come in at the beginning of the season with no CDL. By the time they leave, or before they get laid off for the winter, they end up having their CDL and transitioning into those full-time positions. And that's a short turnaround. That's, they're probably within 2 weeks, I would say, from once they get that CDL to transition to full-time.
So if I had my CDL, I mean, are we talking 6 months? Are we talking 4 months?
No.
2 months?
I'd be happy to get you exact numbers on the candidates and how long it's taken to fill with, like, if somebody has a CDL, if somebody has, like, a certain amount of time to get the CDL. So I'm happy to report back on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the only other question that I had was departments prioritizing the job vacancies for their area. Have those tended to be management roles that get filled first versus worker roles that, are your guys that are doing the frontline work?
I would say no, for the most part. There's layers of management that can, if we have a vacancy at a management position, it wouldn't hold up a, frontline worker, so.
And then in the last few years, the last list that we got, the list that you're here on, I saw that there were several new positions. Most of them look to be like a management type position. Are in the last few years, have we created more management positions than frontline worker positions, or has there been an equal balance?
I don't necessarily have an answer to that tonight, but I'm happy to report back to see. And how far back would you like us to go?
As far as you can.
And I think some of what you may be seeing too is several departments have gone through reorgs. I don't necessarily know that there's any frontline positions to be created. You know, the work is the work. However, you know, in management, we kind of, some departments have changed around and overlapped. You may be seeing new titles to the positions, but I don't think it's a net gain of management.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone have anything further? All right. Thank you both for being here. We look forward to getting the answers on those questions. That is the last item on our agenda, so we are going to adjourn at 6:17.